Hi everyone. This is 12th International Hybrid Conference on Education, Psychology, and Behavioral Science. The topic of this presentation is the influence of teachers' behavior on learners' foreign language speaking anxiety. Here are our four researchers, and I'm Sena. Let's start with the overview of our study. Among the European countries, Turkish-speaking foreign language skill is at the bottom of rankings, which is so dramatic. It can be called the bleeding wound of our country. So, as young Turkish researchers, we wanted to find out, observe, and analyze the underlying reason of the problem, to raise awareness in our educational system, to raise awareness of our teachers, at least for the next generations. That's why we choose middle school students as a target group. And we conduct three different kinds of tools to observe the teachers and make an interview. And we conduct a foreign language anxiety scale over 14 weeks. As a result, teachers' behaviors is a big indicator to constructing classroom atmosphere. The results shows that they affect students' anxiety level positively and negatively.
Hi everyone, I'm Gizem. In this section, I will briefly summarize the literature related to the foreign language anxiety and its connection with teacher behavior. Foreign language anxiety, or FLA, is the feeling of tension and nervousness that many learners experience in language classrooms. According to Horwitz and his friends, this anxiety can appear as communication fear, test anxiety, or fear of negative evaluation. And another study by Vera Kuhn and his colleagues, sources of English language anxiety can be from learner-based sources, class-based sources, out-of-class-based sources, and you can see the details on the table. Several studies have explored how teacher behavior affects students' speaking anxiety. Friendly, humorous, and supportive teachers tend to lower students' anxiety. However, strict or perfectionist teachers, or those intolerant of silence, increase the foreign language anxiety. Creating a stress-free environment and correcting errors gently are seen as key strategies, according to various studies. While these studies provide valuable insights, most of them focus on adult learners or international contexts. EFL contexts, studies show moderate levels of speaking anxiety among students. Factors such as limited exposure to English, peer pressure, and teacher attitudes play a key role. However, there is limited research focusing on teachers' awareness of their students' anxiety, especially among young learners. This gap motivated our story. To sum up, previous research highlights that teachers' attitudes and behaviors are central to students' emotional experiences in language classrooms. Our study aims to explore this relationship further, especially among middle school learners in Turkey. Overall, the study examines the influence of teachers' behaviors on students' foreign language speaking anxiety in Turkish middle school classrooms. Conducted with 55 students and 2 non-native English teachers over 14 weeks, the research included classroom observations, semi-structured interviews, and a foreign language anxiety scale by Horwitz and his colleagues. The findings reveal that teachers' behavior have a moderately significant impact on students' anxiety levels, with positive behaviors reducing foreign language speaking anxiety and negative behaviors making it higher. The results highlight discrepancies between teachers' self-perceptions and their observed classroom practices, underscoring the need for greater teacher awareness of their impact on students' learning experiences. This research contributes to the literature on foreign language speaking anxiety by focusing on young learners in a Turkish context, emphasizing the importance of teachers' attitudes and strategies in mitigating anxiety and fostering effective oral communication.
Hello, my name is Sude. I will be talking about the methodology part of the research. But first, I'd like to mention some details about research questions. So there is 3 main research questions in this study, and they're listed as: what is the anxiety level of the students in oral language classrooms? How do teachers perceive their own behavior regarding foreign language anxiety in oral language classrooms? And finally, is there a relationship between students' anxiety levels and teachers' behavior in oral language classrooms? If yes, to what extent? So these questions are answered in the following sections of the study, but for now, I'd like to move to the methodology part. Primarily, I will start with context, participants, and sampling technique. Initially, the study was conducted in 2 different public middle schools in Istanbul, Turkey. And one of the schools were named as a pilot school, adapting 14 hours of English for the 5th graders. And participants included 55 children from 5th and 6th graders, and also 2 English female teachers with 15 to 20 years of teaching experience. And also, children were grouped as Group A and Group B, and the teachers were named as T1 and T2. T1 was the teacher of Group A, and T2 was the teacher of Group B. When it comes to the sampling technique, a proposed sampling technique was used since the aim of the study and the participants were specifically selected. And for the instruments, a triangulation method was used, so to ensure validity and reliability. So 3 tools were used for this aim, and these tools were interviews, observation scales, and Likert scales. Initially, interviews were used to see how the teachers perceived their own teaching in terms of speaking anxiety. And the interview questions were prepared by the researchers of this study. And there were questions such as, how do you describe foreign language speaking anxiety? And what are the characteristics of the classes where foreign language anxiety is witnessed? For the observation scales, Rabi 2014's observation scale was used by the researchers, and the researchers filled this rubric by their notes that they took during the observation of these 2 different schools. And for the Likert scales, Aydın et al. 2017's Likert scale was used to understand the speaking anxiety level of the students. When it comes to the ethical consideration, it was promised to the participants that their anonymity was going to be kept, and the data received by them were only going to be used for the research purposes. Data collection procedure. For the data collection procedure, I will start with interviews again. The interviews lasted about 20 minutes, and the teachers were informed that they could use any language that they felt comfortable with, and they answered the questions with their own pace. For the observation scales, 2 researchers compared their answers, and they came out with a common result. And for the Likert scales, the students were similarly informed that they didn't need to give any information but their genders and their ages, and they also answered the questions with their own pace. And finally, for the data analysis procedure, the raw data received from the interviews were translated into English, and they were coded according to the relevance and similarity of the responses. And after that, they were categorized under categories, broader categories. And finally, they were gathered under broader teams. And Here is the table from our study. For example, as you can see, we use about the source of speaking anxiety and we use about the groups where anxiety is seen the most. Our categories are gathered under perception about student profiles themes. And we use about the most anxiety increasing activities and we use about strategies for handling the speaking anxiety. Categories are gathered under personal attributions theme. And this is all about methodology part.
Alright, let's move on to the results. Here are findings of teacher interviews, observations, and foreign language anxiety scale. When we have a look at teachers' interviews, it can be seen that there are two different points of view. To teacher 1, she has more discipliner and strict attitude against the students. It could be understood from the quotes. I think what underlies all of this is that they don't study enough. They don't listen to the lesson. They have prejudice, like, I don't understand this. This sounds blamer, and her second quote very striking. She says, no matter what the teacher does, if the child does nothing, nothing happens. It sounds pessimistic as well. Likewise, teacher 2 is rotating the problem from teacher to students. However, her perception is more moderate against the students. She mentioned about their afraid about being made of fun, and she believes that this is the reason of nervousness in the class. She says children are worried about being ridiculed by their friends, mispronouncing, and being bullied in this area. Otherwise, I don't think they are afraid of their teachers, but they are very afraid of each other's. On the other hand, she is more optimistic and supportive. She behaves as she is able to feel the demand of them, and she says, I try to make them a little more courageous. Of course, this is more motivating. The findings of observation is agreed on the interview. It's three categories: the teacher's level of building of self-confidence of students, reducing their anxiety level, and demonstrating proper teacher behavior. These categories show that teacher 1 is weak in giving positive feedbacks. Effective, motivating, supportive prizes is not in her class. Also, she makes very little efforts to decrease their anxiety. Positive behaviors are rarely monitored in her class. Unlike her, teacher 2 is giving proper feedbacks and correcting them by modeling. She helps often. She has much more answers for their need of stress-free class. The last but not the least one is foreign language anxiety scale, which is administered to students. It indicates almost all students have a high level of speaking anxiety in their speaking classes. But all items in the scale showed us the reason is varying. Besides that, teacher behaviors are one of them. So, conclusion of all these findings show that students need more stress-free classes, no burden, no anxiety on their shoulders. One of the biggest provider of this are our teachers, who have considerable amount of self-awareness. They need to reorganize their behaviors. They need to adjust, weigh them pedagogically, and observe the relationship between their own behaviors and their students' anxiety, just like us. The biggest determinants of the class atmosphere is the teacher's as we found out. Different teachers and different students' anxiety levels show that, regardless of other factors like age, like background, or something else, particularly in education systems like Turkey, teacher behaviors are very dominant. Well, for the next questions, who can benefit from this research and the possible benefits of the research for the future studies, we can say that especially pre-service teachers and teachers from across the whole world can make use of this study. We hope sincerely that it will pave the way for teacher awareness studies in other fields. For the limitations, on the other hand, there are some kind of limitations in this study as in others. The first one is it seems a little bit teacher-centered, since two of the tools are conducted on the teachers. Only one tool is used for students, but there are important restrictions for this. Because of some reasons, we also have a limited size of sample. We have just 55 students and 2 teachers. Both teachers and students are very low. So we are suggested the future researchers keep sample more extended to make a more comprehensive study. That's all for us. Thank you for listening.